Good morning. I'm the Reverend Molly Housh Gordon, the minister of this wonderful congregation. I am a pale-skinned woman with long red hair wearing a teal shirt this morning. I'm so glad to be with you. Happy Earth Day! Our opening words are by the Reverend Mark Bellatini. This is our earth. It falls through heaven like a pearl in a glass of plum wine. There are no other earths that I know of. There are no other skies that we have mapped. This is our earth. The oneness who gave birth to it remains nameless. There was no midwife then to bring us word of the birth cry. We only rejoice that it is. This is our earth. Ice caps its head, glaciers clasp its feet, warm wind like the breath of a lover breathes around its breasts, mountains thrust up to the clouds bringing joy, storms blow across its shores bringing fear, silvery fish capture sunlight and bring it down into the deep, as on shore valleys spread with ripening fruit. Cities teem with the poor and disenfranchised in the shadow of golden towers. People live and also die. Highways throb, monks sit in silence, mothers work, crickets chirp, teachers plan, engineers design, fathers write letters, people marry, people cry. They laugh and brood and worry and wait. This is our earth. There are no other earths. Before its wonder, philosophers fall silent. Before its mystery, poets admit their words are shadow, not light. And all the great names religious teachers have left to us, Ishtar, Shekinah, Terra Mater, Suchness, Wakantanka, Gaia, suddenly refuse to announce themselves. And so we too fall silent in wonder at our earth, entering the time where words end and reality begins. Will you please join me in our opening hymn, number 163. This is actually my favorite of all our hymns, For the Earth Forever Turning. I invite you to rise or remain seated as you are most comfortable.
Good morning. I'm Jamila Batchelder, the Director of Religious Education here. I am a middle-aged white woman with dark blonde hair and glasses in a black turtleneck and blazer. Blessed is the sky and all that is warm and filled with light. Blessed is the air and all that is open and free. Blessed is the earth and all that is steady and firm. Blessed is the sea and all that is hidden and deep. Blessed is the fire and all that is fierce and bright. As I light our chalice, will you please join me in the words of affirmation printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We join our hearts in a prayer of gratitude and joy for the beauty of our earth, the beauty of spring unfolding around us. And we are going to take a moment now to sink into a prayer of sorrow and commitment to those lost as the world feels the effects of global warming and climate change. Thousands of people, as well as animals and plants, die every year from the effects of global climate change. And we wish on this Earth Day to acknowledge all that has been lost and all that remains. We'd like to invite those children who would like to help us to come forward. And for each loss named, we're going to drop a large stone in the water, one that really shows the effect of what is lost. And we'll have a shared response from all of us. For each of my laments, the response will be, we remember you. So let's try that. We remember you. And if children want to help with the large stones, you can come forward now. And so to all those people lost to extreme heat waves, we remember you. And let's drop the stone. And to all those people lost to floods, hurricanes, mudslides, and other disasters caused by changing weather patterns, we remember you. To all those people lost to hunger as crop patterns change, we remember you. To all those people lost to drought as weather patterns change, we remember you. To all those people lost to disease as the environment shifts, we remember you. To all those animals, siblings of flesh and blood, breath and bone, whose lives have been lost as global climate changes, we remember you. To all those plants, siblings of the green world, whose lives have been lost as global climates change, we remember you. To all those species lost forever to extinction as global climate changes, we remember you. We remember all of these losses. We remember all that remains. We commit ourselves to restoring balance. So may it be. Amen.
The morning dove, she sings her song late into the evening. She waits and waits for her love to arrive. She is forever grieving. What occurs for her her to have to keep, and such sorrow that it brings. And the only time she finds relief is whenever she sings. Ooh. To have to hold, for no one understands. The bluebird sings such sweet melodies like only bluebird can, and the crow he laughs, and the wren she chickadee is quite content all day, but nobody knows the song of sweet sorrow the morning dove sings each day. To have to keep, and such sorrow that it brings, and the only time she finds relief is whenever she sings. Ooh.
Whew. This last summer, as the staff was planning for our year together, we went down and sat at the fire circle, surrounded by trees, and we spent 10 minutes together in silence, getting in touch with our hearts after the duress of the previous years. And as we finished our meditation, we each found ourselves sharing one by one the same desire, which was deeply to connect with this patch of land we are on, needing to be grounded viscerally in a way that only the earth could give us. And so we brought this need to our plans for the year. And we brought this need to our worship associates who determine what the themes for our reflections together will be each month. And as we talked about our themes for the year, we kept coming up with animals that taught us something we needed to know together in this time. And for a minute there, we thought maybe our themes for the year would simply be birds, groundhogs, butterflies. And eventually we decided this would make life really hard for our small group ministry leaders who have to come up with curriculum for each of our monthly themes. And so we settled on themes like nourishment, grounding, ancestry, slowness. But we couldn't let go of the animals and the earth. And so we decided in our planning for the year to give each month an earth teacher matched with the themes. And you may or may not have noticed these earth teachers coming into our lives together over the course of the church year, because we kept it a little low key. But you saw them in some of our meditations, coming into some of our preaching. And on this Earth Day, we decided to pull back the curtain on our plans for the year and tell you about our earth teachers, and then think together about what yours might be. So our earth teachers this year were apples when we talked about nourishment, soil when we spoke of grounding, trees when we spoke of ancestry, hibernators when we spoke of slowness, stone when we explored formation and transformation, mycelium connecting mushrooms when we talked about interdependence, seeds as we explored emergence, baby birds this month as we explored trust and risk. And next month, as we turn to liberation, our earth teacher will be the songbirds who sing no matter what. And on this Earth Day, we want to sink into our relatedness with our earth teachers as a pathway back to wholeness, to balance, and to care. So Jamila and Violet and I are each going to tell about one of our earth teachers. And then we're going to invite all of us to go outside together for a few moments at the end of the service to find a moment of contemplation with a teacher on our beautiful earth grounds. But for now, we're going to each tell those stories, and while we do, Jamila has an art project ready for anyone who needs or would like to keep their hands busy in the back of the sanctuary. She has cards with many different animals and cards that are blank to write our lessons from the earth, and we're going to punch holes in those and connect them together into a hanging tapestry of earth teachers. So if any children or others would like to work on that project while we have spoken reflections, please feel free to visit the table and to come and go there. This morning I want to tell you about my earth teacher. I have many, but the one that came to mind as I was pondering this service was here on our little patch of land very close to home. I want to talk to you about our native meadow right behind you through those large windows. And I've been learning more about our meadow from one of its nurturers, Carol Arnold, who has been telling me some about our plant friends that grow there, our animal friends that are nurtured there, its cycles and seasons, and also how it came to be. So one of the lessons that I take most deeply from our meadow is watching it go through all of the seasons. These cycles that repeat again and again and that hold us and that we are a part of and could not escape if we tried. Our meadow is a big, visible reflector of the seasons because of how much it changes through them. From almost nothing, flat ground in the winter, to tall, blooming wildflowers, almost as tall as us in the summer, and everything that happens in between. Our meadow actually needs the extremity of those seasons to thrive. It needs to be mown down or burned in the winter in order to spring back up more fully in the spring and the summer. It needs to go through the extremities that feel difficult to us, but that create this beautiful change and thriving for the meadow. And so I have found that watching those season cycles is deep balm to my spirit when I experience extremity and change, which I always experience change in my life. I can go to the meadow, I can watch where it is in its cycle, and I can know that those cycles too feed my spirit and hold my body very literally. And I find a deep balm there to all of my fears as the world changes around me, that I can go to the meadow and know that these cycles hold all of us. They hold all of us always, no matter what. And another lesson that I've learned from the meadow that I want to tell you about is its origin story, which I've recently learned and didn't know until this year, which is that that meadow was a big accident. When our building was expanded to the lower level in the early 90s, there were trees there. And it was a beautiful part of the forest that you can still see behind the meadow space now. And the construction company messed up. They looked at the plans, they read them wrong, and they cut down a section of forest that was never intended to go. And our community grieved the loss of those trees, just as our community now grieves every loss we experience due to climate change. And our community realized that restoring that small patch of land to exactly what it had been before probably wasn't going to work, that we needed to grieve that loss, but that we could work with the land, partner with the ground to see what might emerge next. And our community recognized a deep lesson of the earth, that when we stop doing harm, life comes roaring back. And that even after cutting down those trees, a harm that we grieved, something was going to come and fill in that space and live and grow and thrive, because that is what life does. The poet Gwendolyn Brooks writes, "Wherever life can grow, it will. It will sprout out and do the best it can." And that is a deep lesson of the meadow for me, that whenever we stop the harm, life comes roaring back. And that is a deep balm to my spirit as we live through these climate-changing days, a source of hope for me, that if we can only stop the harm here and here and here, life will sprout out and do the best it can. And the thing that I also learned from the story about the forest being mown down and the meadows springing up and being nurtured in its place is that our relationship to the land is not as fixer or restorer, that it is of the nature of the earth to change and shift, and that our relationship to the land, rather than trying to always take it back to exactly where it was before, artificially and forcefully, is to stop the harm and partner and see what wants to spring up new, what wants to change, what adaptation wants to arise. And so I learned from our meadow particularly that the way we come back into relationship with its land is by being present to it, by sitting quietly and watching what wants to grow, by helping along what wants to sprout up, by simply being present to beauty. Balance can be restored. We need not work extra hard. We simply sometimes need to get out of the way and watch and appreciate and be grateful for the way that life springs up. And so I want to end my reflection about our relationship with our meadow with a poem by Rosemary Watola Trummer. It's titled Urgency, and it speaks so much to me about these climate-changing times. She writes, "Again, the urge to bring gauze to the broken world, and medicine and a plaster cast. Again, the urge to fix things, to heal them, to make them right. Again, the chance to do the real work, which is to look in, to touch the pain but not become it, to see the world exactly as it is and still write it a love letter, to meet what is cracked with clarity, simply to mirror and grow whatever beauty we find." Riffing on Wendell Berry, when despair grows in me for our planet and all the harm it has endured, I come into the presence of our meadow, and I see its always changing beauty, and I witness its resilience and the sheer continuation of life. and I rest in the joy of the meadow and write it a love letter, and am healed. Here ends our first earth lesson of the day, and I want to reflect a small error in your order of service, which is that our next musical interlude will actually be a hymn. So if you'll turn to number 21 in your gray hymnal. This is one of the hymns that has been in every Unitarian Universalist hymnal throughout our history, For the Beauty of the Earth. So I invite you to rise or remain seated as you are most comfortable, to stand and bear witness to the beauty of our earth. I now welcome our Director of Music Ministry, Violet Vonder, Haar, to give her earth lesson.
This is different. Hello. Yes, I'm Violet Vonder, Haar. I'm the Director of Music here. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a white woman with short blonde hair, and I'm wearing a yellow blazer today. And I'm going to tell you a story. Okay, here we go. I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath in. Now imagine that you are no longer a physical being. You are just a ball of light. We're going to call this ball of light your soul. Now ask your soul, why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. For some, the answer may have come quickly, but for others who are still searching to the answers to those questions, what if I told you the answer could be right outside your front door? I consider myself pretty lucky in that I've always known the answer to those questions. I began singing since I could form words, and I started writing songs shortly after. When I was 9 years old, I told my parents I wanted to be a singing conservationist. I didn't quite know at the time what that would look like or be like, but I knew that I was passionate and loved two things, being on stage and being in nature. Though much of my life has changed since the age of 9, those two passions have never wavered for me. They've only grown deeper, and I continue to learn and understand more fully the symbiotic relationship between the two. My passion for the natural world has helped to fill my creative well and has always provided inspiration for my music and my art. Nature is where I go when the business and noise of life gets to be too much or the weight of the world feels too heavy to carry. It's where I go when I'm looking for song ideas or I have unanswered questions. I walk in the woods, I ask for answers, and I usually receive them. Sometimes the answers come in small ways, like seeing new green growth popping up at the end of a long winter, which reminds me to trust in the cycle of death and rebirth. Or I find a stone with a unique shape that brings me joy as I carry it in my pocket throughout the day. But sometimes the answers come in such awe-inspiring and big ways that I spend hours, days, months, and even years trying to unravel and understand at a deeper level. This is the story of one of those, a walk in the woods that brought lessons that are still unfolding for me, a walk that helped me understand my soul's purpose at a deeper level and prepared me for my path forward as a musician in this world. It was midwinter of 2018, and my band, Violin and the Undercurrents, was in the final mixing stages of our full-length studio album, concept album, The Captain. We had spent nearly 2 years recording the album, intentionally taking our time with it, perfecting every note and nuance, and developing the concept of this character, the Captain. The Captain tells the story of a committed leader who has a vision and is deeply passionate. So much so that at times relationships can be affected, sacrifices must be made, and of course many lessons are learned. It highlights the importance of having a solid crew around you that you can trust, willing to put in the work with you to get to your destination. I was asking myself a lot of questions at the time and what it meant to be the captain, to be someone who followed their passion without hesitation. What does it take? Will the world be open to what I have to share? And will they even like it? On January 19th, 2018, I took a walk in the woods seeking answers to these questions. The walk started just like any other, noticing the trees, hearing the leaves crunch under my feet, and walking the same path I did regularly. About 15 minutes in, I noticed a hawk sitting in a tree about 30 feet away from me. I approached the tree to get a closer look, but it quickly flew away. So I followed the direction that it flew in hopes to find it again, which I eventually did. I found it on the ground near the bank of a small brook, and I approached it slowly and quietly, expecting it to fly away, but it didn't. Instead, it just continued walking on the ground. We played follow the leader for some time until eventually it flew up and landed in the low branch of a cedar tree. And at this point, we were both at eye level. I stood at the edge of the tree in absolute awe of what was happening. I collapsed to my hands and my knees, and I just started crying. Overwhelmed, I asked if I could move closer to it, and it didn't move. And so it seemed to give me a nod of approval, so I crawled to the base of the tree, and I proceeded to sit there with a hawk above my head for nearly half an hour. I talked to it, I cried with it, I sang to it, I meditated with it, and I studied nearly every detail, from its striking yellow talons and beak to the loose feather on its right wing. And during our time together, I had asked if it would offer a feather as a souvenir of our time together, thinking that maybe that loose feather would just fall off the wing. It didn't. But eventually, it flew down back to the ground, at which time I began following it again. By this point, we were acquainted pretty well. I had started to feel about this animal the same way I would with a pet or a friend, like we had an understanding. So I kept following it, and it crawled under another cedar tree, this one with very low-hanging branches, so low that I was crouching on my knees in order to be on the same level as this hawk. It was at that moment that sent my heart racing. The hawk turned around toward me, lifted up its wings like it was about to attack, and then it just slowly put its wings back down and kept walking. When I looked closer at the ground where this had just happened, I found a feather. I couldn't believe it. I had asked if it would offer me a feather, and it did. There was a feather right there. It must be one of its own feathers, I thought to myself. I have a thing for feathers, by the way. I held the feather, trying to match the colors on the hawk to the colors on the feather. It was tiny, and it had small black and white dots on it. I thought, surely it's a small feather from the underside of its wing, although I had a feeling that it probably wasn't. I was just trying to convince myself. Eventually, I had to say my goodbyes to my new hawk friend. When I made it back home, I immediately texted my band, and I told them what had happened in full disbelief. After doing a quick Google image search at home, I realized it was not a hawk feather at all, but a woodpecker feather. I have to say I was a little disappointed. I mean, a hawk feather is just a little more majestic than a woodpecker feather. I've always thought of woodpeckers as kind of funny birds, and I never really connected with them. I revisited the cedar tree several times after that to continue looking for clues as to what this all meant. I found 3 more woodpecker feathers in the exact same spot under the exact same tree within the following month. Now, some might look at this interaction and conclude that the hawk was just sick, I was in the right place at the right time, it was just coincidence. But I couldn't help but think that there was a deeper message that this hawk was trying to send me, and I was determined to find out. And many indigenous and ancient cultures, as well as those who work with the spiritual messages from animals, and inspires you to take the lead when the time is right. I began studying and learning more about the messages that we can learn from nature, and thought I had fully grasped what the hawk meant to me, but I was still really puzzled about the woodpecker feather. Until we took the captain on the road. The day we left for our album release tour, there were 4 hawks circling above our house the entire time we were packing up the van for the road as a kind of a send-off for our journey. As we began our journey, we headed to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where one of our first shows on the tour were. And at this show, I felt moved to tell the audience the same story I just told you. And during our intermission, I found the missing puzzle piece. A woman came up to me who said she was not only a children's author, but also owned an animal rehabilitation center that primarily works with birds of prey. She told me that she knew what the significance of the woodpecker was and that she had a story for me. My eyes widened, I got chills down my spine as she started her story. She told me many years ago there were 2 tribes that were at war with each other, battling over land. This war had lasted so long that the sons of one of the tribe leaders told his father he would go on a vision quest to find a way to bring peace back to the nations. So he packed up his hunting and camping gear and began his journey. He traveled for a full day until he came upon a place to sleep deep in the woods. That night, he began to hear a faint whistle in the wind. It was a mysterious sound he had not heard before. He decided that after he rested that night, he would try to find the source of that sound. So he traveled for days, following this faint whistle in the wind, and finally he came upon the edge of the forest and saw at the top a red-headed woodpecker pecking away at a broken branch on the tree. Aha! That was the sound he had heard. The whistle was the sound of the wind moving through the holes in the branches that the woodpecker had made. The woodpecker noticed the boy at the base of the tree, and he told the boy to break a branch off the cedar tree and take it back to his home and carve it into a flute. The boy took the branch and made his way back to where the battle was still taking place. He went to his father and told him, "I have found a way to bring peace back to the nations." He carved the flute and he began to play. Music. It was music that would bring peace. Of course. I couldn't believe my ears. I felt like time had stood still. That was the message I was meant to hear and to remember. As a musician, I have experienced firsthand the transformational power of music in my own personal healing. As a performer, I've seen it transform the energy in a room time and time again, and as a teacher, I have seen it break people open and help them see parts of themselves they never even knew they had. Music has the power to unite and to heal and to inspire. The hawk showed up to encourage and inspire me to step fully into my role as a leader and helped me to become the captain of my own journey. The woodpecker feathers showed up to teach me of the importance of my mission, of bringing music to the people to inspire peace. That same mission I intuitively knew at the age of 9 when I was an aspiring singing conservationist. It is no secret that we as a society have become severely disconnected from the natural world and are collectively going through so much shared grief due to loss of habitat, ecosystems, and species. It is our job to reconnect, to listen to what nature is telling us that it needs for healing and new growth. There is so much magic happening right outside our front door every day that the majority of us miss because of the busy pace of our lives and our reliance upon man-made technology. I hope that this story will inspire you to take time to convene with nature, to see what answers it has for you. The answers to so many of our questions are literally right outside our front door. Nature speaks. All you have to do is take time to listen and to hear. Thank you.
So I used to listen to a lot of fairy tales when I was a kid. And kids, can you remind me, how do fairy tales always end? And they lived happily ever after, yeah. The heroes of the stories were always just entering adulthood, and after completing their one big challenge, they got their happily ever after. So, it was a little surprising when you reach adulthood and you find out that it isn't all smooth sailing after you get through your first big challenge. Hard things just keep happening. A few years ago, right around the same time of year, it seemed like one hard thing after another kept happening. And they weren't happening to me, they were happening to people I cared about. And I found myself doing a lot of wondering, why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? Why is this so hard? I think I was starting to feel pretty sorry for myself and maybe a little bitter. But after a lot of sitting with myself and wrestling with big questions about life, I found myself making peace with things. This world, so full of uncertainty and risk, with no guarantees, this is how it is. It isn't a fairy tale, it is real life, and it's hard. There's no reaching some promised state where everything gets to be easy. And so my little mantra to myself, every time another challenge arose, was, life doesn't get to be easy. That doesn't sound like the most reassuring mantra, but somehow it reassured me. I wasn't unlucky or a failure. This is just how it is. Life doesn't get to be easy. Life doesn't get to be easy. I said it over and over again. And one day, I was waiting in my car, lost in thought about yet another hard thing. And suddenly, one of those gusty spring breezes started blowing. I was parked beneath several blossoming trees. And that I hadn't even been noticing them until suddenly the air all around me was filled with swirling petals. And it was so beautiful. One of the most beautiful moments of my life. The kind of beauty that makes you laugh with delight and then cry with the pure joy of it. And the words formed in my head, whispered to me by the earth. Life doesn't get to be easy, but it does get to be beautiful. And make no mistake, the beauty of it all does not make the pain of the world go away. They sit side by side and intertwined, and each bleeding into the other, round and round in a swirl of joy and sorrow, blossoms and laughter and tears. They are both real. And every time despair feels like it will overtake me, the earth offers me a gift of beauty if I can open my eyes to see it. I remember 2 years ago, we were doing an RE lesson online, And I asked the class, do you think the world is beautiful? And my friend Gordon said to me, no, to my surprise. And then he continued, I know it is. So Gordon is my earth teacher also. If we can open our eyes, we can be reminded of the wholeness of it all. We can tell ourselves, life doesn't get to be easy, but it sure does get to be beautiful. So now I want to invite you to head outside and find that reminder. Find your own earth teacher. Wander around. We'll give you some time, 5 to 8 minutes or so, and we will ring a bell when it is time to return. But just take some time to really be with the beauty of this earth.